mindset. And I wanted you to, one of the things when I started to learn about this 4 or 5 years ago is not to feel bad. Because one of the things I went through is a little bit of guilt that I had been doing things wrong and I had somehow prepared my children poorly for the world. We weren't really given a book to learn to be parents. We do the best we can. I often say that parenting is just a lot of faith. You hope that you do the right thing at the right time for your children. And sometimes it works out and sometimes you're like, oh, that may have been a mistake. So don't feel bad. The good news is when I started to do some of this with my children, although it was not easy, I do slowly see a change in their thinking about life and the struggles that sometimes we have. So my objective today is to talk about how us as parents can build resiliency in our children towards success. So if you want to turn your paper over, your little quiz over, and I want you to draw this line, never, sometimes, often. Just draw a line going across, label one end, never, the other end, often, and somewhere in the middle, sometimes. All right. So I want you to put an X or put your finger where, if you've ever heard your child say this, I can't do this. Have you never heard that? Sometimes or often. Put your finger, you're a never?
For that kid.
Oh, for your kids?
One of them, I think one
Oh,
kid.
one kid. Oh, how did you end up with that kid?
Good work.
Can I have that kid?
Oh.
It's you that did. Grab a chair and come join us. Oh, there's a chair right there. All right, how many of you have heard this? Never, sometimes, I can't do this yet. Put a little X or put your finger there. Can't do this yet. Never. Sometimes, never.
I tell my kids that.
Oh, you tell your kids, so you do hear it in your household, but your kids don't say that, right?
She does if I say, I can't do this, and then she says, yeah.
Did that. How many of you, I'm no good at this. Sometimes in my household it comes, I want to quit. Sometimes, often. Sometimes I can't do this. Okay, not good, I'm no good at this. I can become better at this. How many of you hear that? I can become better at this. Never. Often. Oh, you have one of those. What grade did I get? How many do you hear that? Never, sometimes, often. It doesn't, if you don't have younger children, if you have older children, you might have that. What can I do to improve? How many of you hear that? Never, sometimes, often. Never. What can I do to improve? Sometimes? Sometimes? Never. How about this one? Where's that one? Oh, that's it. So, when we listen for messages of success, some of us, and I definitely am guilty of saying this sometimes to children, that I work with, and also my own children. I have to catch myself. You learn that so quickly. You're so smart. Have you ever said that to your children? Look at that drawing or overheard this. Martha is the next Picasso or what? That drawing is phenomenal. You're so brilliant, you got an A without even studying. Embedded within those messages, though, sometimes as parents and even as educators, we feel like, oh, those are trying to build the self-esteem of the children. And we definitely went through a period in parenting between, I think it was more like the 80s to the 90s, where it was all about, and I think I am an offshoot of that, of being raised in an era where we wanted to build self-esteem of people. And we didn't want to ever say anything bad because then we would destroy them, right? And it was like, oh, we have, even when things were not good, we said they were good because we didn't want to hurt the self-esteem. And so we went through this period in the 80s and the 90s, maybe into the 70s, as a result of the history that the United States was going through, where we was like, oh, we're all feeling wonderful, we all should be happy all the time. And that came out of that era. But implicit in those messages to children is, if you say, you learn that so quickly, you're so smart, well, if I don't learn something quickly, then I must not be smart, which is not true. I shouldn't try drawing anything because it won't be, they won't see me as the next Picasso, they won't see me as a great artist. I better quit studying or I won't think I'm brilliant. So that's not the messages we want for our children. That we want them to know that learning is hard, and it's challenging, and it requires struggle. But implicit in those other messages was that when people don't struggle, that's when they're smart. When people get things really quickly and right away, they're the smart ones and they're the successful ones, and not the other way around. And history actually has proven the opposite, right? It's people who have really persevered and worked really hard at things that have had the most success in life, both personally and in their careers. So I want to share this. Much of this work comes from Carol Dweck. She wrote a book called The Growth Mindset. And this is she's repeated this research over and over again, and it's pretty compelling. So you can imagine she's got a group of students, 400 fifth graders at 400 fifth graders in the New York public schools. Okay, so you got the context. So a group of researchers went in to work with those students. So the students were given a nonverbal IQ test. And they had a variety of puzzles. And the puzzles were easy. Okay, so you got it? An IQ test with puzzles, and it was easy. The researchers knew the kids would get it right away. Now, they split the group into two. Some who were praised for their intelligence, and they were told one line of praise. You're so smart. Remember, it's easy. You're so smart. The other side, they said, you worked really hard at this. They praised their effort. Effort versus intelligence. Remember, it was easy. So, did it go? No. So the students were given a choice in the second round. Okay, so that was the first round, easy. Praise for your intelligence. You're so smart. You worked really hard at this. You must have worked really hard for their effort. So the students were given a choice in the second round. Their choice was, you can take a really difficult test than the first one. But the researchers told the kids they'd learn a lot from trying this. So I'm going to give you a hard one, and you're going to learn a lot. Or you can take the easy one, just like the first. So they were given that choice. Hard one, you're going to learn a lot. An easy one, just like the first one. So what do you think the kids chose? What do you think this group that I've praised for your effort? You worked really hard at this. What did they choose? The hard one. Why do you think the hard one? You wanted to learn? How about you guys, the intelligence group? I praised you. You were so smart. What do you think they chose? The easy one? Anybody disagree? It's counterintuitive though, right? Let's see. In the second round, what happened? The kids they praised for their effort. 90%, wasn't a small group, 90% chose the harder set of puzzles. 90%. And a majority of those praised, you're so smart, took the easy way. I'll have the easy test. The smart, quote, quote, unquote, kids took the cop-out. They wanted the easier one. So what Carol Dweck's hypothesizes, well, why did this happen? When we praise children for their intelligence, she says, we tell them that's the name of the game. Look smart, don't risk making mistakes. And that's what the 5th graders had done. They'd chosen to look smart and not risk the chance of being embarrassed. And it was one line of praise that did it. One line of praise that had the impact. That's all they said. You're so smart. And they said it once. You must have worked really hard on this. One line of praise to have that impact. So in the 3rd round, she didn't stop yet. In the 3rd round, the test was difficult. They designed it so the kids would fail. It was challenging. They designed it really hard. And predictably, everybody failed the test. So how do you think, you're my effort group, how do you think the kids who were praised for their effort did on this test? What do you think?
Well, we tried.
Tried? They tried. Okay, you guys, I praised you. You're so smart. How do you think they did on it? Not good? What do you think their reaction was? Upset? So in this 3rd round, what happened? Those praised for their effort on the first test assumed they hadn't focused hard enough on it. They got very involved, though, and were willing to try every single puzzle. Remember, it was designed for them to fail, and they persevered. They tried it all. Many of them, this is the most provocative piece of it, many of them unprovoked remarked, "This is my favorite test." And it was designed for them to fail and to struggle. And they said it was their favorite, from one line of praise. Now you can imagine the other group, right? And opposite to this. Wasn't the case for those praised for their smarts. They assumed that their failure was evidence that they weren't really smart at all. So you've proven that I'm not smart. And the researchers described it was painful to watch them. You can imagine their bodies were tensing with anxiety and nervousness. Some of the kids started to cry, and it was just really difficult for them to watch the kids struggle and give up on the test. Remember, one line of praise. You work really hard at this. You must be really smart. Just from one line of praise. So Dweck's researchers then gave, she didn't finish yet, she gave them a final round of tests that were engineered to be as easy as the first round. So the test was easy. Remember that first easy puzzle? Gave it to all the 5th graders again. How do you think the kids who were praised for their intelligence did on this?
They were demoralized, so probably that.
Poorly? Because we had destroyed their self-esteem or demoralized them? How do you think the kids praised for their effort did? Well, okay. So let's see. Those who had been praised for their effort improved their scores by 30%. So they improved by 30% from one line of praise. Those who were told they were smart decreased from the beginning their scores and did worse by 20% from the beginning, from one line of praise. And remember, it was easy. It was meant for them to be very successful at it, from one line of praise. And now Carol Dweck has repeated this research with several groups of adults, college students, teenagers, with very similar results over and over again. That the impact of praise versus on our intelligence versus effort, and the impact of that on children, teens, and adults. She hypothesized, well, why does this happen? By emphasizing effort. When I say you must have worked really hard on this. It's something, a variable you can control. I can control my effort. It's behavior that I can control. And we give something that children, teens, adults can do. But when I praise your intelligence, we don't feel we can control that. I was born with that, I can't fix that, I can't change that. Which is not true. But it takes it out of the control of the child and provides them a recipe for, they can't respond to failure. In follow-up interviews, Dweck discovered that those who think innate intelligence, that I'm just born really smart, is the key to success, begin to discount the importance of effort. So children who are getting that message, I'm smart, I wasn't born that way, I'm not a good artist, it's not my talent, they discount the importance of that effort. They think that they don't need to put the effort into it. And expending effort has become stigmatized. So that if you work really hard at something, that must mean you're not getting it quickly enough, you're not smart enough. You must not have those natural gifts. We know also that praise matters. So when you say to a child that, oh, and it's written and it's awful, it's like it's all messy, it's all, and you say, oh, good job on that. Kids as young as 7 can tell when you mean what you mean. They know they did a messy job. They can see it. And when you say good job, you're giving the message that that they know, oh, you're lying. And how many of us as parents want to give a message to our children that we're lying to them? For example, telling my son he did a great job after he played a lousy game of baseball isn't sincere. So, in sincerity matters, we also know by the age of 12, children believe that earning praise from a teacher is not a sign you did well. It's also a sign you lack ability and the teacher thinks you need extra encouragement. So the kids, teens, preteens, this researcher found that if I say to someone, you did a great job, the rest of the kids are thinking, oh, he must not be that smart. But if I say, you could work harder on this, please fix number 1 and number 2, that's not your best work. The rest of the kids are saying, oh, that's the smart kid. Let me try to do that. So that even kids can realize that praise matters, sincerity matters. The more specific our praise is about how to improve, the kids get the belief that, oh, I can be better at something. So what do you think? Is praise too much a bad thing? So we definitely went through this phase in parenting. Research and books that we could buy that said, oh, let's praise our children for everything that we do. Instead, we want our children to have persistence. A belief that if they work harder in something, that failure is not a bad thing. That failure means you tried, you worked hard on something, and that's part of the learning process. And that's the message that we really want to give. And our praise really needs to be very specific to help children grow. There's also a philosophy around rewards. Do we give kids rewards or not? A person who grows up getting too frequent rewards will not have persistence because they'll quit when the rewards disappear. We need kids to have they do things just because they want to do them. They want to do their homework because they know it's about learning and because I'll get better at it. And that's why not because they'll get the A at the end or they'll get a good grade in school. It's about that intrinsic piece about learning. And I'm not saying this is easy at all. Let me give you some examples. I'll tell you the story of my son. When he was 9, he was playing on a baseball team. And he would go up to bat, and game after game, he would strike out. Strike out, strike out, strike out. He says, I don't want to play. I quit. I don't want to do this. He would cry. He would melt at the home plate because he couldn't hit the ball. And I was reading this book at this time. He was 8 or 9. I opened up the book and I started, there's a chapter on athletes. So I started to read to him from the book, because I didn't know what to do, about Muhammad Ali. And about Derek Jeter, is that his name? Which he knows, he knew all about. And I showed him a video of Muhammad Ali. He was saying, don't tell me, because he was, right, he had the big hands, big body. He was not supposed to be a great boxer. It turned out to be one of the greatest boxers. I told him the story of Michael Jordan, who was cut from his high school basketball team. Then went on to be the greatest basketball player of all time that we had. And I showed him a video of him talking about it. And I said, well, why don't you ask your coach for some extra batting practice? Why don't you ask your dad if he'll take you to the field and show you and do some extras? So we started to talk about it. I said, Malcolm, you're doing this thing where you get up the bat and you're like, I think they do this in the whatever the baseball team is, the major leagues, right? They shake the thing on the bat on the plate, and then they do this dance, and then they put it up here. And I said, you're not focused. Stop doing that. Get your stance, the bat ready, stop shaking everything around, and watch the pitcher. And he didn't do it, I said, remember the feedback I gave you about that. Did his extra batting practice. He hit the ball. It wasn't a home run, but it went. He got to first base. Got out at second. But he was ecstatic. My praise wasn't, great job. My praise was, I'm so proud of you for listening to the feedback and stop wiggling at home plate. You did a great job listening. I'm so proud of you that you did some extra batting practice. And so then every time he got up to bat and he hit the ball or didn't hit the ball, over time it became less. And I kept saying, this is what, it's hard. And you will hit the ball, I promise, but it takes work and it takes practice. You're not hitting the ball because you're not a good baseball player or you can't ever be a baseball player. It's because you need practice. It takes effort. And giving him very succinct feedback about his performance. So to be specific, instead of saying you're such a good baseball player, you hit the ball really hard, you focus, you had a great stance. You worked hard when praising their efforts, when they bring home the spelling test. How many of you have this? The spelling test comes home with 100, but they already knew the words at the beginning of the week anyway. You're not going to say, oh, good job. You already knew the words. You don't need effort. But if you didn't know the words and you started at the beginning of the week and you started practicing and at the end of the week you got a 100 or a 90 or you improved from not knowing any to knowing, you improved, you really worked hard every night on your spelling words and you went from knowing none of them to knowing 10 of them. I'm really proud of you. Praising really specifically the effort, the hard work, and the practice it takes instead of and the things that really matter where they're doing that. And to be really genuine, because our kids know when we're not, and to be sincere. I know I don't want my children to feel that I'm being insincere. And sometimes when I don't know what to say, so my son in sports, my son in soccer would do the same thing. He'd go to kick the ball and it would miss, right, the goal, like, it goes like all over the place. And he'd say, I hate, and he'd get in the car, and I hate soccer, and I didn't hit the ball, and I don't know what to say. And I just listen. I say nothing. I didn't say, good job, you put good effort, because he's melting, and he really is not putting anything, there's nothing good coming out of him, because he's crying, he's upset over a game, and he shouldn't be, instead of thinking. But later I'll go back, Malcolm, I noticed that you got upset after you threw a tantrum after you didn't get the, how else could you have handled that? Or why were you so upset? I just ask questions. So when I don't know what to say, because things are hard or it's a struggle, I start to try to listen. Well, why? and ask questions instead of immediately going to trying to build up, make the child, make him feel better. Instead of saying things that I really don't mean. You did a great job. We also want to encourage things that are out of their comfort zone. So right now, I'm having a battle with Malcolm with trumpet, who he's done it for 3 years, and now he doesn't want to do it all of a sudden. I don't want to do it, I want to quit. And I'm saying, this is a battle right now. I'm not going to let you quit. You're in the middle of it. I need you to continue. I know it's hard. And I'm trying to figure out really what the issue is with the trumpet and why he doesn't like it. And trying to encourage to persevere and continue with something that's new, even though you may not like it. Or even though you may want to give it up and see the whole thing through. And encourage that it's going to be hard at first. It's not easy. And it does get better over time. And embracing failure. So, in seeing the opportunity. So my son, 2-3 weeks ago, came home with a 55 on a science test. For a science test, he actually did study. And then to say, okay, didn't get upset, and say, what can we learn from this? What did you do, and what did you not do? What will you do next time? And see it as a learning opportunity for him, and say, we can learn from this. So some of the things we discovered is that in class he's not taking good enough notes, and this teacher relies a lot on note-taking in class, and he's just sitting there, and he's never been asked before to take really good notes in class, and there's no book attached with the class. He has to use handouts. Each teacher uses handouts, and so he needs to pay more careful attention to that. And I said, okay, this is an opportunity for us to grow. How will you study next time? What can your goal be for the next test? Oh, I think I'm going to try to get a 70. Okay, that's your goal. Let's work at it. And he did work at it, and he got an 88. And I said, great, that's awesome. That's because you really thought about what you needed to do different. You also went to the teacher and asked for an explanation. You spent time doing your flashcards. You went over your notes and tried to make sure you understood them. Those are what got you to the 88. And I'm really proud of you for putting in the effort to get better. So while his dad is in the background saying, oh, the 55, you can't do that, he's not going to, I said, nope, we are embracing failure. This is a 55, this is a positive thing, and we're seeing it from a growth mindset. A fixed mindset will be, that 55, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I can't do this. Not that I don't hear that also, because he is also seeing himself in relation to other kids, and he sees himself next to the kid who has all A pluses, and he says, well, I'll never have an A plus, I'll never have 100. I said, stop seeing yourself in relation to that other kid, and see yourself in relation to you, and you have a 55, and your goal is to get it to a 70, and we're embracing failure. Don't see yourself, but that's hard, that's a hard battle. I'm not going to win that in one day. He's still going to see himself in relation to his peers, but I need to have him see him as himself. And one of the things I noticed is, and I would tell you when you go back and think about this with your own children, persevere yourself. Because at first, I'm like, this is never going to work. Carol Dweck is crazy. This never happens. This is not good parenting advice. But slowly, over time, you start to see the difference. In the last couple of weeks, talking with my son about his schoolwork, he came yesterday, I was like, came home and he's like, I took notes on all this, I made flashcards on my science words, I'm having a test on Monday, did it all by himself. And I said, I'm really proud of you for getting going and getting, before I had to nudge him, push him, and I said, you're on the right track. I think you're going to do well on this test. And if you don't do well, that's okay. We are going to embrace the failure and decide what your next step is. So, this is a situation that could happen. Let's think about this situation. You're a 9-year-old, Elizabeth was on her way to her first gymnastics meet. She's lanky, flexible, energetic, and she's just right for gymnastics. Her body's, she's got the perfect body for gymnastics. She's perfect. Of course, she was a little nervous about competing, but she was good at gymnastics, felt confident she'd do well. She had even thought about the perfect place in her room for the trophy she was going to get. Confidence, confidence. She'd hang it perfect. In the first event and the floor exercise, Elizabeth went first. She did a nice job. The scoring changed, though, after her first few girls went up, and she lost. Elizabeth also did well in other events, but not well enough to win. By the end of the evening, she'd received no ribbons, and she's devastated. She's melting. I hate gymnastics. She's crying. What do you say to Elizabeth? Any thoughts what you could say? Do you imagine someone saying, the judges were rigged, they're awful, it was all their fault. That never happens, right? Happened the other day at my son's hockey game where everybody's yelling at the refs. The refs, they didn't know what they were doing. Da, 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 da. I said, no. And my son's like, oh, refs are awful. We're not playing that game. You guys didn't play defense well enough. You need to think about what you need to do. You're the one who can control your behavior. You can't control those refs' behavior. So we're not playing that game. Stop that. So you can imagine that, right? The judges, they were all rigged. It's all their fault. Could you hear Elizabeth saying, I hate gymnastics, I'm going to quit, right? And a part of us is like, okay, they don't like gymnastics, let's let them give up, which is a choice, right? Like I said, parenting is partly faith, and you hope you make the right decisions. No, Elizabeth, you made a commitment to gymnastics, we're going to give it a shot. You need to try. What else could you say? What could we say to embrace this idea of effort?
Well, to understand where she came up short in the school, and what skills she needs to work on.
Elizabeth, let's talk to your coach and see which areas you might improve upon. Elizabeth, do you want some extra gym time? Maybe we can arrange to go to open gym. All these gyms have open gym. And you can practice your routine a little more. Is there maybe your friends can help you and you can practice together. Let's develop a routine or a strategy. What I have found most successful is not to talk at that point when they're devastated and say, I know it was a hard day, we'll talk about it later. Or just say nothing, because it's not the right time. Let them melt and then come back to it later. Let's talk about that. What would you like your plan to be? I know that it was a difficult day, but I'm really proud of you for going through the whole day. Now let's come up with a plan.
I think like my son, he's so afraid of failing, he doesn't even want to try things in the first place. So I don't even get to that point where, like, how do you deal with the hard feelings?
Yeah.
It's and that's where I get why people want to build up their confidence, so they try new things, but maybe it's another way of going about it. I don't know.
Yeah, and so one of the things I would say is to model it a lot. So one of the questions, this comes a little later, but one of the things, let me see what's here, is to ask questions. So instead of saying, what did you do today? What was the hardest part of your day? And I often say, oh, the hardest, and I'll make up something, because I can't think of anything, but I'll just make up something. Oh, the hardest part of my day was when I had to do this. I was a little nervous about it, a little anxious about it, and I really struggled with what I was going to say or do. Or I didn't really feel prepared enough for this, and that was really hard. I couldn't find my adapter this morning for the computer, and I got all nervous and anxious. So what was the hardest part of your day? And what did you learn from it? And what can you do differently next time? What mistakes did I make? So I'll also make up something to say, oh, I made this mistake. I thought I was better prepared, and I wasn't. Next time I think I'll do this. And so modeling that. It also using anything that happens, children's literature, any books that they're reading, anything that comes up in the news. There are lots of examples that if you start looking for people who persevere and who are showing that mindset, you'll find tons of them when you start looking for them and just pointing them out all the time. I also tried to pick one thing and say, okay, let's work on that one thing and let's get better at it. You'll notice I don't talk a lot about my daughter, because she's kind of a little younger. But one of the things I noticed, all these conversations with my son, she was absorbing it. And she'll say, yeah, I'm going to work harder at this too, and try this. She has kind of internalized it, as we have. But she's 10, and there's drama all the time. The hormones have kicked in for sure. And she says, I hate you because you're making me do this. I don't want to do this. And she'll throw herself on the floor. I said, that's okay. You don't have to like me. I don't like you at this moment either. And that's okay. And I'll walk away, and then she'll come back. You also have to realize where they are developmentally. So I would say to pick something small and set a goal, and then go around that piece. Also to listen to really find out what the real issue is. Like, I don't really yet know why my son wants to give up trumpet. Like, I haven't figured that out. But I'm plugging away at it, and I keep asking, and I keep looking for the right moment. As someone told me with middle schoolers and teens, the best time to talk to them, and I'm really trying really hard, is when you're sitting in the car next to each other. It's like when they finally grow up so they can sit in the front seat. It's the best time to talk to your teen or preteen, because they don't have to look at you. And they feel like there's much more comfort in that, and so I'm trying that. And I'm learning quite a lot when he's sitting next to me, and I'm kind of pushing a little, and just to have, and he wants to turn the radio on, and I'll leave it on for like 3 minutes, and then I'll turn it off, because I need to sneak in some conversation. And just asking, what can you learn from that losing game? What can you learn from that failing grade? What can you improve for next time? And then modeling it and looking for models in other folks. So in telling stories, there's great stories. Thomas Edison, if you look at anything they're studying in school and saying, oh, I know that Thomas Edison, he tried that light bulb thing 1,000 times before he got it right. Imagine 1,000 times to invent something. And when we look at these stories over and over, if people who are really successful, they really worked really hard at it. Walt Disney was fired as a newspaper editor because he lacked imagination. Imagine that. He went bankrupt. He was rejected for his first park, his first Disney World park, because they thought it would attract the undesirables, riffraff. Oops. There's this rule called the 10,000 hour rule. It comes from a book by Malcolm Gladwell. And he talks about really successful people. And he starts with hockey players, actually, who were born, I don't understand the hockey rules, but if you're born a little later, you get to start younger, or you have more time to practice. But hockey players who were born in one certain month had more time to grow in their skills as hockey players, and they are the ones that are most likely to make it to the NHL, because they had more time to practice. He also tells the story of Bill Gates. Bill Gates just had more time to work on computers. When he was younger, he convinced the PTO of his school to build one of those mainframe computers in the school, and then he lived there practically all the time. He would sneak in on weekends, and he would be in there working with that mainframe computer. And that's where he got all his practice that led to his success. They even tell the story of the Beatles. The Beatles, why were they such a great band? Well, they would play in these little bars and pubs till 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning. And they got so good at playing with each other. And that's why they became so successful. It wasn't that they were just awesome, wonderful, talented people at what they were doing. They had more time to practice and get better at their craft. It's effort that counts, not necessarily what's in the brain. I also explained to my kids how the brain works, and I had to show this to my son when he got that 55. I said, look, that 55 is because you didn't build up enough neurons. You didn't get enough of those neurons and synapses firing. And you need to build up more of them, which means you need to put a little more effort and practice on the right things. You were practicing on some things, but you really didn't get it all. So we need to build up more neurons, and that's going to help you get that better test. And explaining how that works. And truthfully, I Googled brain videos. And I'm just playing them, and I'm showing them, and maybe I have 30 seconds of his attention. I'm saying, look, this is how you build neurons. He also believes me, and the research is proving, that when you re-look at stuff right before you go to bed, not do all your studying right before you go to bed, but if you re-look at the material right before you go to bed and bring it to the front of your brain, your long-term memory, short-term memory, you're better able to retain it, because at night is when all those synapses are growing. So that's what he does. He'll take his homework and he'll read his study notes, and then he puts it under his pillow. He says, I'm hoping that if I put it under the pillow, it'll help me learn it. So whatever helps you learn, I'm happy that you're giving it a shot. And it does seem to be working. What time do we end?
11:05.
Oh, so I want to make sure to show you something to make you, all right, we'll come back to that. So this video is an example of growth mindset. I have shown it to my children several times. And I will warn you that it might make you cry. It makes me cry every time I see it. And I've shared it with my children several times, and I said, this is my hope and my dream for you, really. So I won't give too much of it away. It's about 3 minutes. Derek Redmond was a favorite to medal in the Olympic 400 meter. "150 meters into the race, Derek felt a searing pain. In agony, he fell to the ground with a torn hamstring. Not willing to give up, he determined to finish the race.
You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise
Breaking through security, the man came to Derek's side.
on stormy seas. And I am strong when I am on your shoulders. Raise me up to more than I can be.
Together, Father and Son continued. Shortly before the finish line, Derek Redmond got to see the exterior elevation and died over 65 feet.
I am strong when I am on your shoulders. Raise me up to more than I can be.
And I would say that this is really what I would hope for my own children, is that when things were difficult, they would persevere and continue, right? They would want to finish the race. And that perhaps they'd come and lean on my shoulder and I'd be able to help them, but eventually they would have to need to finish it themselves and not need me to help them finish it. And I would say that that's what I would hope for my own children and what I'm trying to build upon them. And I often say, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. Like right now, it's the 55 on the science test, and that's really no big deal. But later it will be, my girlfriend broke up with me. It will be a mistake I made in school that gets me in really big trouble, the thing I said to someone. And there will be bigger problems. And all the pressures that are on our children via the media, and peer, and drugs, and violence, etc., that I would want my son to be able to come and be able to hold him up, but to know that his mistakes are okay and that we're going to build and learn from them and embrace them. And say, okay, how do we grow and learn as a person? How do we have a growth mindset? Also, I think it's challenging also to have that mindset about everything we do. I think of my own personal life, I think career-wise, I say, oh, I have such a growth mindset, if something happens, I can go and I can fix it, we can work harder on that. But I'll say that there are things that are hard for me, like my own relationship with my sister. I have to try to have a growth mindset about it. I'm saying, okay, how do I get better? But sometimes it's easier to say, oh, this is hard, this will never get better, it's awful. So it's hard. It's not that we all have a growth mindset about it's hard work. And it's okay, I tell my son sometimes, it's okay to say you think you're stupid, but it's not okay to stay there. Right? It's okay to be upset about the 55, it's okay to cry about whatever happened, but it's not okay to stay there. You have to say, how do I get better? How do I embrace this? How do I move on and embrace this piece? And so that's the next piece for him. All right, so think about these situations. Thumbs up if you think it's a growth mindset. Thumbs down if it's a fixed mindset. Ready? You learn that so quickly, you're so smart. Yes, down. Everyone learns in different ways. Let's keep trying to find ways that work for you. Yeah. I know this is really hard for you. You haven't mastered it yet, but it will get easier with practice. Yeah. You're a talented athlete. You have natural ability. Nothing natural when you work out. No one is in our family is good at math. You're brilliant. You got an A without even studying. Yeah. I like the effort you put in, but let's work together some more time to figure out what it is you don't understand. I know you're used to school being easy for you. You used to feel like you were the smart kid all the time. The truth is you weren't using your brain to the fullest. I'm really excited you're stretching yourself now and working to learn hard things. Oh, these are some other ones. All right, one run at a time. There are some criticisms of Carol Dweck's work. Some recent criticisms on her are that we blame the learner and their fixed mindset for their failures. So we blame that the fact that they had a failure. The reason my son had a 55 on a science test is his fault, and he has a fixed mindset about science. He doesn't really like science. By placing the blame on the student, we take the blame away from the schools, and teachers and schools don't have to change. And any praise is a manipulation of the child. So those are some recent criticisms. Carol Dweck would say we all have fixed mindsets in some areas of our lives, and that we have to work a little bit harder on them. Praise should be feedback, she would say, specific feedback about how to improve. And I would also say to my son when I text him, I'm so proud you went to your trumpet lesson today. I'm also building my relationship with him so that he can, that we can continue to have the conversation as he gets older and to be a teen and he wants to talk to me less. So that I think it's really specific praise that's genuine. I'm genuinely proud of him because he made the right decision this morning to go to trumpet. And I'll tell them that later. You're really showing that you're responsible, you're making responsible decisions and good decisions. So I think it just has to be really specific. We all have a responsibility to build each other up, to build our children up, to build each other's children up, and build each other's, even in our relationships with each other, in our families, in our neighborhoods, in our community. So it's not that that's the student's the child's responsibility to have a growth mindset. We need to nurture it. And we need to nurture it in each other, right? family and build upon each other. And so by trying to teach my children about it, I think I also benefit as well in growing in my own growth mindset about different things. And here are some resources for you to think about. This is Carol Dweck's book. I highly recommend it. There's a chapter on growth mindset in your relationship. It hasn't really worked for me in my relationship with my significant other, but I'm working at it. I'm trying to have a growth mindset. There's a chapter for coaches and educators and parents. There's a chapter on business too that's fascinating to see how people are trying to apply it to business. This book is a great one, Nurture Shock. It tries to apply research, of which this is one of them, to parenting. The Outliers, that's the one that talks about the hockey players, and it's just a great story. And I just take sections of it and I read it to my kids. And I do think they listen for the most part, and not that they're always listening. How Children Succeed is another one. He talks about comparing a very affluent independent school to an urban city school, and how they both approach trying to help children succeed in developing grit and character. And this is a new one for math, about developing a math mindset also. And there are some others that just mindsets for parents, and talking to your kid about their brain and helping them understand how their brain works. So I would leave you with, give it a shot, try to learn some more about it. And it really is not easy, so it's a lot of work and a lot of your own perseverance. And with time, you do start to see results. They do listen, because it is hard to change the mindset that we've had in the past. But start small and look for people who are showing growth mindset. Show your children that video and say, look at what he did, and talk about perseverance. We're talking about perseverance in schools with children in math, in science, about how to get better. The school's social emotional piece talks about we're not going to give up, we're going to keep working. And so those messages you can reinforce at home with different things and things that come up. Good luck. It's hard, it's really hard. You want to keep getting more difficult as they get older.